Hey everyone, and thank you for joining me on this episode of In the Trenches. Our guest today is a fine art painter, an all-around rad artist. In fact, I think I'm coming back in a future life as a painter because as of lately, I'm all things paint, color, and canvas. So I'm pretty stoked to share this guest with you. That all said, if y'all are liking the content, please like, share, and subscribe. Let's jump right now into it with Ed Nash. Look who showed up in the fancy dream car, you say, but man, what an honor to have you making the trip up to be in the trenches here, otherwise known as my house. But
my pleasure.
I couldn't help but to want to go outside and immediately see your Porsche. What is it, Carrera? What is it?
Yeah, 4S.
Completely wrapped in your trademark signature style painting. Painting, you know, you don't have one, but your style.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So what? Tell me a little bit more about that. You said you had to have it, right? Because even at one point, someone said to you, "You'll never make it," right?
Yeah, it was. I guess two references on that. One is be careful who you trust, right?
Yeah, always.
Who you trust for information, and second. Always remember those people that deter you because they can be the inspiration,
Absolutely.
And so
keep receipts.
That's right. I like that. So I long time ago, I had different career. I was going to change business and restart out as an artist. And this guy said, well, it just kind of put me off. He said, well, the only people that really I've known who are artists, they don't make any money and they just have to live in their own car. I knew this guy and, he lived in his car and, that's just, if that's what you want, that's probably what's going to happen. And I remember that story. And 15 years later, I'm starting my art career and I always thought that one day it'd be really cool just to kind of have my own dream car and sleep in it for the night. But and then I got the car and I thought it'd be really cool to wrap it with the painting, because I'd seen Janis Joplin did it and BMW did it with Rauschenberg and different people over the years. I thought it'd be pretty fun to do it. So I tried like taking a painting and then printing it up, but it looked too big. Mm-hmm. Or you could see the drips weren't life size.
Yeah.
I thought, what I need to do is make a painting that is exactly the scale that I need for the car, which was going to be 10 feet by 20 feet.
Okay.
So
that's smart.
So I thought, well, then it's exactly to scale.
Yeah. So
I did two paintings, stitched them together in Photoshop, and then I mirrored them one way, and then I mirrored them the other.
Genius.
And then we printed it, and took all the wheels off and powder coated those, and we tried to line them all up, and it was pretty hard to get the panels to connect.
Sure.
Because most wraps, it's just like one consistent color.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Right.
No,
so you got to line up the panels.
It's beautiful.
And it was really hard because when they're stretching it, it's not an equal stretch. So then they've got to try to do the other panel. Wow. But it was a fun project to do. It was we chose a reflective vinyl.
It's great.
Which actually made it a little bit.
I think we took.
But it's the hardest cut to wrap because it's all curves.
Yeah. Oh.
Not like a Cybertruck. That's right.
I honestly, I'm so looking forward to our conversation because I don't know what it is, but I'm like, I don't know if someday I'm destined to like move to the mountains and like have a painting studio. I've never painted, but, and I say this story because I wonder, because it's going to lead into how did you start with it? Because I'm drawn to nothing that I see completion. I'm drawn to the texture, the process, the tools, the smearing of the paint and the color. Color is so massively important to me in almost all of my work. And I see it so radiant in yours, even if it is subdued. Color is there. but I'm just wondering what I'm so drawn to it, and I don't know a lot. So I'm going to ask questions that are probably going to be pretty lame, but I do know, I'll tell you what I do know.
Yeah.
I'm very seasoned in the artist process. That I can promise.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So like, I think that's where my interest in podcasts is like having a rad artist like yourself and understanding where the parallels of our art can intersect. You know, that's something I do a lot.
Yeah.
That to be said, the most complicated question of this entire podcast. What's your favorite color?
Oh God!
My kids wanted me to ask that.
I don't know. You know, I do like this color you've got right here.
Yeah.
It's like a Mars green.
Sure.
Or like
you like off hues. I know that.
Yeah.
Nothing primary.
Uh-huh.
I'll tell you one thing you've got that I haven't seen in artwork that much is, man, your oranges and reds and yellows when you put your desert. I don't know if it's what collection that was.
Yeah.
But holy hell, sunset or something, it's just vivid, rich orange. I love that. Do you, I mean, like, you don't go to Home Depot and just be like, I like this shade. How did you get into art? I mean, come on, let's hear the beginning stories at least.
When I was, I went to this Montessori school when I was a kid. It starts at 2.5 and it goes all the way to 18. It's an interesting school. It's right in right where we lived, and it's like started by I forget the guy's name. Anyway, it's a little town in Letchworth. It's a little town in England called Letchworth Garden City. It's the first planned town.
Okay.
Yeah, little town started by Quakers, and there are no pubs in that town.
Okay,
so it's kind of interesting. Anyway, this little town, this little school called St. Christo. It was a little private school. And it was a vegetarian school. You call the teacher by the first name. And it was just it was a cool school. And they didn't teach a lot of competition. It was all kind of like feeling and, you know, kind of experimenting. And so I obviously must have enjoyed art there. And I went to another school. My parents took me out of that school because they realized I couldn't read. This isn't working out well.
He can smear some colors. That's funny.
Still can't read that well.
I love it.
So they moved me to a different school, like a boys' prep school, all boys school, and that was about 13. I applied to go to another school, a high school, and they said apply for this scholarship. Drawing scholarship. One of the teachers said, well, your son's kind of natural at drawing. Why doesn't he apply for this scholarship? So I did, and I got this art scholarship to go to this school. And so it was kind of, for me...
Was that more of a draw? Was it drawing? Was it painting?
It was drawing at that point.
Something, yeah. I mean, because painting is expensive, right? Or is it not?
Yeah, I mean, it is. That's right. That's right. When you start with watercolors. Yeah, that's right.
I mean, I will get into that process. But
no, but I mean, I think when you're younger, you know, when you first start out, you're copying, you know, and you're trying to imitate and learn the different techniques. And, you know, in fact, you know, Van Gogh said that's really how we should learn, is by observing and drawing.
Agreed.
You know, when we draw, we observe. We actually observe a lot more through drawing than we do through painting. I think maybe there's sort of a slower cognitive process that goes on, you know, less instinctual with painting.
Yeah, it does feel like it could be more direct and accurate or something, maybe. Okay.
Because you got to look and consider, and then rather than a particularly abstract painting, really, that comes just sort of a natural instinctual thing. So after that, I decided I wanted to go to university and study. I didn't realize I liked art. And then I went to university. I studied fine art and psychology. So I did 2 degrees. And
this is all in England?
Reading University, right outside of London. And really, at that point, they sort of try to deconstruct what you do, what you've done before, you know, strip away all the things you've learned in terms of drawing and painting, and let's get down to really what is art. You know, what materials can you use? And so at that point, I really got into like sort of video installations and conceptual art, and creating installations and experiences for the viewer. And I did a dissertation on it was like the virtual disembodiment of cyberspace and its effects on personality.
Wow.
So that's kind of what I was really, at that point I was so interested in the combination of psychology and art. And this was like 97 to 2000. So we were barely using email.
We're on the similar age then.
Yeah. So I was barely, we weren't really using email, just about using email. Internet was there, but it was all dial up, and but there were a lot of people using like Moos and MUDs and virtual domains. And so I was really interested in how people would communicate in a virtual space, in virtual spaces. And so then I was sort of trying to connect that to the art world. And, this is our physical space, but the internet opens us up to a larger space, much like a piece of art is here, but the piece of art extends beyond that physical space, and we embody that space, right? Much like, an airplane pilot feels sometimes they're as big as a plane, right? They're the embodiment of technology.
Okay.
And that's what I was interested in. And I created to sort of create that concept. I would create surveillance rooms, and this was really before people were surveilling like they are now in public spaces.
Yeah.
And so I went and bought a bunch of security cameras, and for the final art show, I stationed them all the way around the art department. Had 10 of them, and then I set up a room much like this, but it was full of computer monitors, like little,
little surveillance
monitors. Yeah. And I set it up like there was like a guy living there, and he had a cup of tea and an old kettle and banks of old videotapes and a map and a broom. And it was like this real space that someone lived in. And so people walked around the whole art gallery looking at everyone else's art spaces. And I wanted to make sure mine would be the last they'd go to. And so they finally walk in to this little room, and they realize, and they start looking at these monitors, and they realize these are the people in the rest of the art show. And so what I did really was like moving the viewer became the work of art.
Sure.
Right. Oh, and so you kind of see these people walking around. You're like, oh, I've been watched. First of all, it was a little bit like, it was a bit awkward. Like, we'd been watched the whole time, and then you realize that it wasn't it was the artwork was the process of someone looking at a piece of art.
Yeah.
And so, a lot of artists have been dealing with that over the years, like Vito Acconci. It's like, where does the art take place?
Okay.
Does the art take place in the cognitive area of my brain? Right? Is it the thought process, which is the piece of art, or is it the physical piece of art? Yeah. Right. And so that was interesting to me to combine, my interest in art and then psychology.
Now, did you ever have doubts of pursuing fine art? I mean, because now you're putting a lot of all your eggs in that basket to come out and pursue the art world.
Right.
I mean, that's not a real secure.
It's not very secure
space.
That's right.
And you've been spending a lot of time in this kind of coveted, nurtured world. Now you come out into the real world with all these things. How hard was it to like move that into like money, making a living at it?
Well, I didn't go straight into being an artist. I realized that I was being taught. Really, I guess at university they were teaching you like how to learn for yourself, right? Sure. How to explore your own concepts and how to put them together, and present them in a way. Unfortunately, a lot of the tutors in a university aren't necessarily always successful practicing artists.
Sure.
Now, some of them came in. Some of the guest professors were fantastic, and that was really interesting to me to see them like, well, this is what they do for a living. One of the guys, his name was Bill Colbert, he's an Australian guy. and he would create really beautiful light installations. And he took this like giant pickup, like a huge pickup truck, not pickup truck, like a what do you call it? Like huge
Dump truck.
And filled it full of lights. And the lights were just like huge tube lights. They were just like pouring out.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and so I thought, well, this is interesting. This is how, and I was like, well, how do you monetize that?
Yeah,
how do you get a career? You know, well, it's a lot of grants you got to apply for, and so backtrack just like 3 years into university, a buddy of mine calls me and says, you know, hey, do you want to work in America for the summer? You know, I spent the last summer working for a company out of Nashville, and I ran my own business for the summer. I was like, well, that sounds interesting. What were you doing? So, well, you know, I was selling books door to door to pay, you know, and I was like, well, that kind of sounds interesting. You know, he said, well, you know, he kind of pitched me an idea that, you know, you learn how to sell. And
Sure.
I thought, well, that makes sense, really, because no one's really teaching me anything about business and you know, at university. So I thought, well, let's go do that. So I was 19, 20, and, you know, got a backpack together, flew to New York, got a Greyhound bus down to Nashville. And there's a company called Southwestern here in Nashville. It's one of the oldest companies in Nashville. They recruit college students to sell books door to door in the summer. And they've been doing it for 160, 70 years. And so I did that. They had this week's worth of training. And then you head off to your sales area for the summer. And at the end of that week, they say, right, you're going to be heading off to Decatur, Illinois. So that's where I went for the summer.
Whoa.
So we went up there, and then you knock on doors to find a place to stay, and you stay with a host family, and you try to, the first thing is you find a place to stay, and he said, well,
wow, yeah,
it's just me and some buddies. We just need a place to rest our head. And we were working 80 hours a week, and so that's what we did. Stayed in the house once, and the next we moved into above a popcorn shop. And so that really taught me a lot.
Yeah.
I'm
like
20 years old.
On that.
And so we did that did it for 12 weeks, and on a little push bike, driving around, cycling around. You get up at 5:59, you have a cold shower, you go to work, and you're just on the streets all day.
I'm correlating a lot of this to like my film school.
Yeah.
And my moving to LA.
Uh-huh.
No roof on a Jeep.
Yeah.
No doors. Parking in barely a parking lot next to a dumpster behind Roscoe's Chicken and Waffles on Gower.
Wow.
Being fed food from a styrofoam thing at the end of the night.
God.
Being pulled out by third string gangs, beat. Hopping the fences to 24-hour fitness to shower.
How old were you?
Then?
Yeah.
Or now? Then I was 19.
Yeah.
19, 20. Yeah, and then you book your big job and you're back in. For me, I'll never, ever lose that feeling.
Sure. People couldn't pay you enough money for you learn. You just
don't understand what 4:30 in the morning is like. When you've got LA winter dew on you and you're sleeping with one eye open because the night before you just got your ass beat.
Wow.
And you're still grinding to get that phone call.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happened. But
waiting on a payphone.
You never know. I was internet spamming.
Were you really?
It was rough. But
how did you get your first gig?
First gig, well, I see now. I was grinding and doing. I had done some real low budget music videos. So I would convince band members if they were a 4-piece or whatever rock band, $1,000 a band member, And back then in the 90s, you get some roll of film and a film camera and you just go shoot. Well, I did some pretty innovative things, and it did get me an agent. And that agent today is still probably the biggest agent there is doing music videos. Right. I started with him. He started with me. Huh. It was that was the romance of my early career, was my agent believed And for me being young, that's my experience is an agent that has nothing else but to invest their belief in you. That's what I got. So when you say, how did I get it? It was just that. No one, my reel didn't deserve that job. It was the push on Tommy Labuda to say that it's okay, you're going to be fine, and taking that risk, and then one after another. And then
did he know the situation you were in?
That was a little different. Yeah, yes, he did.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's where he realized too. He's like, this guy's come all that way. He's put it all on the line.
He knows the backstory to it.
He's sacrificed it all. He's out there, and he's gonna do it.
Yeah, I mean, it goes deep to like one of the things, because I got hit so hard or something got infected, then it was an abscess tooth. Then the abscess tooth went to my eye. It was like I went to the dentist at like 7 a.m. on Larchmont. I'm like, you got to pull this thing. You got to pull it. Said, how old are you? I'm like, 18, 19. You can't pull your molar. You got a long time with that tooth. You know what I mean? Pay me when you can. Oh, wow. You just did it. And like, not only like that, like a month later, I booked that job. Paid him. It's pretty cool.
That's so funny. Didn't Chet Baker lose his teeth that way? He was punched in the face, and Dizzy Gillespie like paid to fix his tooth or something.
Yeah,
like
man.
That. It's interesting, though, isn't it? Like that whole element of the struggle when you're younger, and as a parent now, you're like, I don't know if my parents realized what I was doing or what I was going through. Would we allow our kids to do that now? Is that struggle, isn't it? It's like, in doing that, you learned everything, right? You were like, I can do it all for myself, and I don't need all the other stuff. And you earned it. Like if it's given to you, you don't always appreciate it as much as earning it and struggling for it. And then because you earned it, you hang on to it. You're like, I'm gonna do my best for this thing.
If your kids did say, and they showed interest in painting and being a fine artist, in whatever world they're in, photographer, would you be more inclined to encourage the longevity of it with them, knowing that the struggle is real, or is the struggle worth the juice?
I think
the squeeze.
I think then I talk to a lot of young artists about, if you really want to be an artist, go and do something else first before you want to be an artist. Go and learn some sort of like business sales skills, experience, advertising, just the real world. Sure. Learn to communicate and, present yourself well. And if you want to be an artist, go and look at 100,000 paintings, If you want to be a video maker, go and watch like all the videos I've ever made. If you want to be an ad guy, well, start an art scrapbook, an ad scrapbook. Follow ads, track them. Don't just be like interested in the field and then, because, 10, 20, 30% of the success as an artist is the actual piece of art or the video, right? Your success is communicating with the clients, having it polished, just the ease, your name, all of these other things add to the art, correct?
Yes.
Right. And that's the same in the art world too, but
even the crew that I have, the people that work with me, the ease of that comes out in the product.
That's right. It's like,
it's all part of.
They know they're going to get this beautiful look, but you've got your team and your experience and the people that you've met to enable it.
Exactly. One thing I am dying to know about you, because when you think of fine art or even just painting, you just go, okay, here's a blank canvas, a shit ton of color, and if I was to say, go do your thing, well, how did it? And you would do your thing. How long did it take for you to find your style, your thing? Meaning the road in when you were first putting paper on. Was it X, and then where you have grown and evolved your art through just doing it and learning and perfecting, or even saying, I don't like what I'm doing over here. I'm never going to do that again. And that, So have you always, where did you learn your style, and when did you know you had it and you can move in that direction?
Yeah. So I'll just continue where, so I'd sold books for that summer, right? When I was 20. And then I went back to university and did another year of university. And then I think I had 2 more years after that, but I kept going back and doing that in the summers. And then I ended up doing it for about 9 years. Well, after university,
you got good at it.
I got good at it.
You got good at getting home.
Yeah, I got good knocking on doors. And so at the end of university, I didn't have a job because I studied art.
Yeah.
I'd thought about getting into the ad world. I thought that could be interesting.
You can draw a parallel to it at least.
I could see, and then I did. They then said, well, you come work with us. It'd be like a straight commission thing, but you're going to be recruiting college students to then sell books like I was doing, right? And so then I moved up to Scotland. I did that. Living in Scotland, I would go to different universities in Scotland. And a couple of years after that, I would start going to different countries. So I was like, well, let's go to Bulgaria, because no one was recruiting college kids from Bulgaria. We went to Poland, and I'd spend I had a couple of guys I'd recruited, and they would go out and live there, and I would go there for a couple of days, work with them, and then I'd go to the next country, a couple of days there, and then I'd go to Ireland and London.
What books are you selling?
Encyclopedias, cat books, study guides, reference books, and kids' books. Okay. And so we were doing, so I would recruit college kids during the year, and then they'd come out here for the summer and sell. All right. So we were going to one summer I was in LA, another summer I was in San Jose, California. Then I spent a lot of time up in Seattle, Oregon, in that area. So I'd go there for the summer and I'd come back. And then after about 9 years of doing it, and it was really fun. I mean, we had a great time. We were learning a lot. It was really hard work, but we would sell for the summer, then we'd come back and we'd do different trips, and we'd go to Africa, we'd go skiing. It was fun. And then, but I realized at some point, my final year of doing it, I was like, I'd spent more money than I'd made. Okay. Right? I drew too much money because I was just traveling really hard. Yeah. The summer didn't go well. I thought, well, I can either start again and build it all back, or I can just start over and go do something else. And if I'm going to do it, I've got to do it, right? Yeah. So I did, and then I moved to. So the owner of the company, the Southwestern, his name was Spencer Hayes. He was a really big art collector, and he actually went on to build a huge art collection that he donated to the Musée d'Orsay. And so I thought it would be interesting to partner with him. So Spencer, I want to start an art business. You should be interested in
Now you haven't had any art yet.
I haven't had any art yet.
You just saying you want to start an art business.
Correct.
But I know a lot about it.
I know I can sell.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Cool.
I can sell. Right. And I can work hard. And I have an experience of making art. I don't know much about art history, but I'm really passionate about finding artists and developing their art careers. And he said, well, I think you should do that, but you should move to Nashville and do it. So I did. Moved to Nashville, called my wife up. She was my girlfriend at the time. And said, well, hey, I'm not coming back to Scotland. We go to Nashville. She was like, and she's been amazing. I mean, she was amazing. She's okay. And she's a little frustrated, but she came out and she also sold books to me as well. And so moved here, and I started selling late 19th century, early 20th century European and American Impressionist paintings. And so I would basically consign paintings from an art gallery or consign them from someone who wanted to sell them. And I would go to people's homes and talk to them about collecting art. And that was kind of like my concept. I was like 29, 28, and I just cold call people and say, my name's Nash. I'm an art consultant. I'd love to come to your home and talk to you about collecting art. And what I really try to do is then, condense the art world and help them explain the different criteria that are used for determining value in art. Okay. And then bring paintings to their home and help them understand it, right? Because a lot of people have the means to collect art, but they just feel like that it's out of their price range, right? Now, if you go to an art museum, you see a lot of paintings in there, and you might recognize a couple of artist names, but there's a lot of artists in there who you don't recognize.
Yeah.
And there were thousands of people that went to France and came back in this Impressionist period. And these are affordable paintings, right?
Okay, got you.
So
that makes sense.
They have like a secondary market.
Yeah.
Art. And that's really what I was doing at that point. And I met this guy, his name was Harry Moody. And Harry had started this company called Athlon Sports. And I went to his house and I gave him this little sales pitch. And he called him back. He said, look, come back and meet with me because I think I've got some things that can help you out. So I went back and met with him. He said, well, first of all, you're a nice guy, but your whole presentation is just dreadful.
Oh, man.
So he really helped me to develop this concept of dealing with successful individuals and talk to them about the art world and how do you present how do you present something that's quite complex to individuals who are very smart and very successful in their own field. How do you present that in a way that they can get their arms around it in a very quick, in like a 45-minute period, and make a decision whether they want to work with you or not?
Okay.
Right. And so that's sort of what I did. And he really taught me a lot about slowing down. He was a songwriter too. So he was sort of talking about like writing scripts and making sure that you didn't let your mouth run ahead of your brain.
Sure.
Right. And he said, he basically explained it like this. He said, a lot of people aren't disciplined enough to prepare hard enough for that presentation. Right. They just think, well, I've kind of got it. I'll be okay with it.
Sure.
Right. And so he said that basically he came up with this concept that was like hope was the gap that separates opportunity from preparation. And a lot of people just get by on hoping I've got it, and they're not mentally willing enough or prepared enough to become like uncomfortable enough to go through those steps. So when they meet someone, they've kind of squeezed out the hope.
But at this point, though, you haven't put anything to a canvas, though, right?
No, I haven't. So I did this for 3 years. So I ended up building a business.
That's impressive.
I was like consigning paintings, and I was going to people's homes, and people. Yeah, that's right. I was calling a lot of people, and really, what I learned during that time was I was looking at hundreds of paintings a day, like hundreds of paintings. I was going to people's homes, talking about art, and I realized someone said to me, well, do you have any abstract paintings? And I was like, I don't. And people kept asking me for something abstract or contemporary. And I was like, well, I've only got these old paintings over here. So anyway, I started painting again one day, which is
because of that notion? Like,
well,
did that...
Interestingly, when I became a Christian, I started to really want to paint again. Okay. Right. And I guess my art world previously at university was a little bit more dealing with like sort of sociological, critical aspects of society, right?
Okay.
Not always so positive. It's kind of easier to find.
Sure, the negative.
Correct. It's easier to find the negative than the positive, right?
Absolutely.
And so when I became a Christian, I just kind of dived into exploring these different things and what the Christian faith meant and how it influenced me in different areas. And so I was listening to this parable of the seed sower, and how like God's word fell on people's hearts and it was hard and it dried up. And so I was like, well, I'm going to go and get a canvas from the art store. I'm going to paint what I feel like that painting is speaking to me about. Okay. And so I went and I did that painting. And then I did another one. And I took these paintings along with me because someone said, well, that's kind of a cool painting. I like that. So, well, I did study art. I mean, that's
sure.
But what I did is I took all the things I'd learned from looking at paintings.
Okay.
In terms of composition, style, palette.
Yeah, did you know what to buy? I mean, I wouldn't even know what the tools to get.
Yeah, I knew because I had previously done that.
Yeah, but so I need that
right,
tool.
So I was like, well, this is kind of what I feel like. So I did this painting, and then I took the first person I went to see, and they bought it. And I was like, well, okay, cool. And then the next person I went to I was like, well, this is really what I should be doing.
Now, how far off from that first painting, those few paintings that you just spoke of, to the stuff we would see on your store?
In terms of composition, similar, but I've definitely added different materials and mediums. I sort of moved into, I became really interested. I was like, well, what is it I'm really interested in? I was very interested in the Japanese aesthetic called wabisabi, which is really dealing with finding beauty through the imperfection, beauty through the patina, beauty through the decay. That's you, right? We're all kind of wabi-sabi, and
making the ugly beautiful.
Right.
Yeah, what someone would think is ugly beautiful. Yeah.
Well, and our society is really interested in the clean, the Target, the Walmart, the fresh, the disposable. Yeah. And so how do we harness the old? And we somehow there's something about patina that people love. That's kind of what I try to emulate as well. How do I create these layers, and how do I create this patina? And how do I use this? How do I incorporate composition into that?
Now, I can't help, like, you have collections, right? And does travel, and when do you seek out travel to inspire you for a collection? Like, how do you determine a collection? I mean, is it?
Yeah, it's a bit like there's a great book I was listening to last year. It's called Beatles 66. And it was talking about that year of the Beatles.
Okay.
And they're interviewing Lennon. I think I'm like, well, what inspires your work?
Sure.
And he said, when we first started out, we were really inspired by like Little Richard and Buddy Holly and these different artists, and we would try to copy their work and use different things in their work. But now the work inspires itself, right? The work's kind of, one's like, oh, that was a kind of cool sound. Let's use that on the next thing. And so I feel it's a bit like a tree with branches where you've got one painting goes this way and you're like, oh, that would be interesting if I did this in this color palette, or what happened if I used, sand or glue or a satellite dish or LED art or a stencil, or how do I encompass it in what I've already done? How do I use this and incorporate it? Different things. So
do you do commissioned art?
A lot of commissioned art. Yeah, a lot of commissioned art. And often they will lead to another series, right? Someone will say, well, hey, I just did these paintings for Lamborghini, their headquarters in Italy. Okay. And I thought it'd be kind of cool to do this sort of series and this concept. And then that sort of led to another series. Oh. But into doing that, I pulled in other concepts that I did before, right?
How do you know when a series, a collection is complete?
I don't think they're ever complete. You kind of come back in and maybe do another one. And I think I started doing the collections because people, it was funny because like I didn't start out that way. A lot of artists do that. They'll do like a series. They're really organized about it. And I wasn't really like that. I mean, one's over here and one's over there. But to show someone the work, I think you have to break it down in a way that they can get their heads around it. Sure. Like if I were to show you 1,000 paintings I did, you're like, well, I'm not sure. Just getting something people can get their arms around, their eyes around.
And that helps when you commission because you can talk to them.
Sure.
Too. You can see where they're at.
Yeah.
Also their house, and then obviously, color is huge.
Sure, color is really important.
Very important. Now, do you have you spent a lot of time on one painting and then didn't like it, or do you just put it aside? Meaning mid painting, you're like, this isn't going where I know it's going off the rails. It's not it. Do you just stop, or do you finish, or do you convince yourself it's it?
That's why you paint, right?
Yeah.
The struggle, that point that you.
When do you stop? How much do you stop? When
you're like, it's so cool when you've got a new painting you're going to do, maybe it's a commission or you're working for something, and you start on it, and you're like, there's a point where you're like, this is going to work. And it doesn't happen so much anymore, right? Because you kind of know where you're trying to get to. Like you, when if you're going to do this thing,
Absolutely.
you know how you're going to get to.
Yes.
But when you first started out with some of these things, you're like, oh, I'm not sure this is going to look. And then you fight through it. And then you're like, well, I just got to trust the process because I've done this before. I need time. I need to step back. Just what you've done, your composition. And then suddenly you're like, oh, it's awesome, because and if it wasn't for that little struggle in the middle, it wouldn't be as satisfying. It wouldn't be as satisfying. Yeah, it's just and it's those little things. You're like, oh, I got to, and now and after a while you realize, well, I'm got to be okay with that. Actually, don't run away from that. It's kind of cool because that way you're sort of like you're fighting something and use it, and then it's kind of a cool process. And then in doing that, you realize, well, I've got a whole new thing going in that direction. Sometimes I'll stop and I'll leave it. Most of the time, I'm like, I have to figure it out.
Okay, that's me too.
Yeah, you know what I mean.
I mean, sometimes I feel like artists are in their own. They need to get out of their own way. Sometimes, you know what I mean. Like,
yes.
And for me, stepping back, meaning distance from it, and I mean time. Like, even if it took me 10 minutes to finish the photo and be like, and I ease back from the monitor, but a photo that might be done like that.
That's right.
Just look at it from different angles,
fresh
and
eyes.
then leave. Mm-hmm. As far as color, it's so good to go acclimate yourself to daylight, and then come back in and see what, is
Winston Churchill always said that change is as good as a rest.
That's true.
Right? And he was a great painter as well.
Was he?
Yeah. Watercolorist.
What trait do you think makes a great painter? One trait, if it was. There's not, but just fun question.
That's good question. Good question. And maybe just need to observe and reflect.
I was gonna say, even if it's like that one thing, it's like almost like if there was a superpower, it would be like, I'm a huge people watcher.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of my favorite things.
Yeah.
What was it?
No, but back on that point though, like of like stopping and reflecting. Like I'll do a painting, kind of like you'll stop and then, you need your brain to rest. You need distance from it because you're so absorbed in it. Yeah. And so I intentionally built my art studio where I've got this space to hang them up and leave them. Mm-hmm. And I might come back and add something to it, and it might be fine, but you have to wait. But it's not always done. You think it's done, but I've got to wait because I need to reflect and see how it looks in a white space, and
I'm starting to really appreciate, like what you said a minute ago about, what was the term for imperfections in patina?
Wabi-sabi.
Yeah. I'm really into that now in my own work, where I am leaning in to imperfections. Or not dismissing that and moving on to a different shot, or just kind of saying, is the imperfections human enough that I'm going to enjoy? Because I get into it, I think a lot of artists do. We get into our little space and we want to control everything. Yeah. Right? I mean, it's part of our thing. Like, fuck the world. We can't control anything out there. Yeah. But I can control this. Yeah. And that's kind of what a lot of I've discovered people do, artists do. Yeah. So I've been leaning in on wabi-sabi. Yeah. Like, just kind of like.
Read up on it. It's interesting.
That is cool.
It's into other, there's the Japanese have different terms for, really unique terms for different things. Yeah. There's another one called kintasugi, where they take porcelain ceramics and they'll break them and they'll put them back together, and in the cracks, they seal the cracks back together with gold. Mm-hmm. So it's beautiful. It's like in the cracks, there's a beauty, right? And the struggles, there's the beauty. And the struggles of getting smashed in the face in the dumpster in LA, the struggles, they're beautiful. They're not like worldly beautiful, but like what came from it was incredible, right? Yes. And it's part of your story. Yes. And we're all built up of the struggles and the scar, and like they always say, like, when a bone breaks, it's stronger in where the
it feels stronger.
And so I think that's important as a as an artist to sort of, remember those different things and don't forget those struggles.
You can't. How long is it? What's the longest it's taken you to do a painting? And do you have a favorite still to this day? That's just like
I can show you a couple.
I would love to get some.
But Rothko always said, well, he's always asked, well, how long did it take to make a painting? He said, my whole life. So that's, it's like, but
sure.
How long does it take? Yeah, no, I mean, it depends. Like some paintings I've done before, and it's I know this theme, I know this composition, and it might take a day to do the start, and the next day to do another layer, next to do another layer, and then we varnish it and frame it.
How many layers? That was one of my.
I might have like 5 or 6 layers.
Do you have to let it dry?
Well, that's the thing.
Get
sometimes
wet with it to smear it and
sometimes,
feel it, right?
it's like they're better when you work on them quicker. Right.
Quicker. While the paint is
correct, so that you've got drips laying in with other paint, and then you have to let it dry, and then you do it over again. And sometimes what I'll do is I'll do the painting, and then I'll varnish it, and then I'll do another layer over that, so it's like a seal. It's like sealed, and there's different layers. And so that's what I've learned over time, is to create those layers. And I remember like during COVID, I couldn't get some canvases, so I thought I'm just going to rework some of my older canvases and do another layer over them. There was just this real richness to that patina. And there's another layer over it.
Just put another.
Yeah.
You're sealing it with more paint, more thickness.
Yeah, and so I think there's that crafting of that veil to the painting, and people, when they see it in person, they understand it. You see the images online, it's like it's one thing.
Yeah.
But when you see it in person, there's
photos the same way.
That's
man.
right. That's right.
I agree.
Yeah.
Do you have a process? Do you have a song? Do you have music that you listen to that is like?
I'll list the different songs.
Does that work into
some
the
mornings
mood?
it's like a Sigur Rós, or it's some Radiohead, or it just depends what I'm feeling for the day. And sometimes I'll come in at night and paint, or on the weekend just to clear the air. You've got to work really hard to protect your studio time, the painting time.
Really?
It can get full of so many other things.
Now, do you have multiple paintings going on at once?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You always got different paintings going on. Yeah.
Because you have different clients, different commissions, different.
And the some I'll start and be like, oh man, I need to get back to that one. And then, but yeah, you've got to protect that studio time. I've got a phenomenal guy. He's my assistant. He's worked with me for since I've probably like 15 years now. So he's really, really good at helping me taking the fabrication part out, and he does the fabrication, the framing, and stretching canvases.
Really?
Yeah, he's brilliant. I mean, his name's Ecom Fitzgerald is his name.
Really? Yeah. Have you always been in this specific realm? You said abstract. Have you always?
Yeah, that really when I started painting again, that's where
because there was a shortage of of your market, and is that?
Well, it wasn't so much that. It's just like that's really what I wanted to do. I really wanted to paint abstract, but I feel like it's not. People take it as an easy, like they're like, oh, it's abstract painting. It's just kind of easy, but it's a process of combining composition and then understanding the material and the layer and the scale and the palette. And anyone can paint abstract, right? But how do you make it so it's reflective? And how does it look considered? But how does it look loose but tight enough, right? How it doesn't just look like, oh, I've just gone
thrown to get
right,
intentional,
correct,
while still being human,
right,
and somewhat whimsically in the moment,
sure.
So it feels the emotion that you had in that time of creation,
right.
But you also want to embody all of the knowledge and technician work, or skill craft work,
sure.
I guess.
Yeah. Really well put.
Is that good?
No, that's right. That's exactly it. That's exactly it. I mean, but it's kind of like your work too. You know, sometimes, you're trying to.
I'm seeing direct parallels.
Yeah, you got to be loose. You got to be, you got to be loose, but you can't be too cognizant, and it's too mechanical.
I say it like this. So I say it like this, and Troy will back me up. is if we go into a video and I have my worlds, I will create a area of that world.
Yeah.
But I will direct so that it's lit, it's art directed in the right way.
Mm-hmm.
But how I go about capturing that now, I know it's going to live in that world.
Right.
So now I can somewhat intentionally whimsically catch lightning in a bottle.
Right.
I'm not spraying the world.
Right.
No.
Right.
I'm spraying in this area.
Right.
And I've already given enough notes to sit back and let it evolve.
Yeah.
Now, if it doesn't evolve because of the clock, I start to inject, getting it tighter and tighter and tighter. But I'm still very cautious. I don't want the talent to be a robot listening to exactly what I say. So it's very similar.
Yeah.
It's all a process.
It just takes you. Well, what happens is doesn't take as long to get to where you want to get to.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
Right?
And we have music always playing on our set.
That's why people say, well, how long does it take a painting? Well, for the first one, it did take a long time, right? Yeah. What I do say to artists too is that if you really want to be a successful artist, you got to figure out how to make a painting reasonably quickly, right?
Yeah.
Because if you don't make enough paintings, you can't sell enough paintings, so you can't make enough paintings. Yes. You see what I'm saying? Like if you make one painting a year, then I've got to have a side hustle to pay for the bill. So
it's a lot easier to paint one painting proper over the year versus 17 in that same style, right?
Sure.
I mean, you're maximizing your time and all of that stuff. So if I was to be standing next to you while you're painting, would I be covered in paint?
No. I mean, it depends on what stage you were at.
Tell me.
And it depends what type of painting I was making.
Well,
like, some of them, when I make these paintings out of glue and sand, sawdust, you're covered in paint. I mean, you're walking out there chucking your clothes away. I mean, it's a mess. You have to have a shower at the end of it.
And sawdust and what's
glue
that called when you're using cigarettes? I thought there was a term in the art world. We had, remember Cheryl, she said that. Oh darn!
It's like found objects.
It was a certain kind. There was a certain term of art that she used. That was
maybe it's like found objects
when bringing in things.
Yeah, like mixed media materials.
There's a guy on Instagram. I don't know his name. I should know it. But have you seen him where
he'll smash the can against the wall?
Not that one. That's kind of, I don't like that one.
You don't.
The one that does like Bart Simpson. He carries it, and it's an outline of Bart, and it's goopy paint.
Yeah.
And he just takes his spatula, I guess, and goes
done.
And basically, what he's doing is he's wasting away most of that paint.
Yeah.
And he's just doing it like that. And you pull back, and it's still Bart Simpson, but now it's like his eyes far, and it's like
I love that.
It's really wow, wicked and art and and you're like, oh my god, you just screwed it up.
Yeah, no, it looks amazing.
And you see the end, you're like,
well, these ones are like this. Yeah, these ones are like this where you do. So like some of these are pretty kind of cool where you create.
So that's more like a 3D. It's very tactile. It's like an ocean, like a coral reef from above.
Yeah.
Let me see that. Wow, is that the motivation though? Like
interesting. It's interesting that over the years, initially when you think of a landscape painting, you might think of horizon line, and this kind of classic, like there's your marine painting back there, right behind me. There's that sort of old.
So those clumps, clumps. Is that sawdust clumps?
It's wood pulp,
with a bunch of
there's spray
glue
paint,
and paint and
there's
stuff
paint,
to stick it
and
together.
There's water, and then this actually has these are little flecks of mica. So when you look up close, they shimmer. God. Yeah, it's a dry-fit material.
So how heavy is that piece?
It's not that heavy. It's interesting. Like one of those things when you're an artist is understanding your materials and your mediums, and how do you make something that looks really, really heavy?
Yeah, it does.
But it's
heavy.
not. Because no one likes heavy art.
I was going to say,
it's when I first learned, I started doing them on carpet, and it's very easy to make something that's heavy, right? I mean, but how do you make something that is heavy, is lightweight but solid. It's archival. It can stand the test of time.
Yeah, your
So
colors
that's,
are so vivid.
Here's one.
You on mushrooms?
I really did not think that. People are like,
wow,
like, this would be
it's so super hyper. It's beautiful though.
Like this is you asked me like when I travel. So this is another series that I work with a gallery in Big Sky, Montana.
Oh yeah.
And have you ever been to Grand Prismatic in Yellowstone?
No.
You know what it is?
Yes.
This is like wild looking spring. Like
Is it?
Actually, here, I think there's probably a picture right here. Like,
so you do get inspired by your travels, and like I saw some of like the Smokies and
the Smokies.
Like, you know,
this is one here. This is here you go.
Where the do you know? Have you ever thought of putting your work with photography?
Yeah. So that's Grand Prismatic. It's in Yellowstone, and so, you know, traditionally we, you know. It's interesting. This place, there was a couple of artists that went along with the first expedition to Yellowstone, and they did these paintings, and they took them back to Congress, and they showed them these paintings and said, "Look, this place is incredible. We've got to protect this area." And from these paintings, they determined they were going to make it the first national park. And so that's why these paintings are really important. But how do we? Now we look at the art, look at the world differently from drones and airplanes. How do we look at landscape painting differently?
Sure.
So I started to think, well, how do I paint something that looks like that, right? That's very organically formed.
Yeah.
You know, it looks like, you know, there's a lot of creation in it. It's like, you know, in the beginning, there was
how much
like
prep work do you do to get before you?
It's a lot of prep. It's a lot of prep.
You have to put things together?
I have a cement mixer. We mix the wood and mix the material and
see if it's going to meld right? See if it's going to glue and adhere.
So this kind of like my sort of take on, you know, on these
look at
areas.
That. Yeah, look at that rust or like that iron.
Oxidation.
Yeah. But then it just falls into the vivid ocean, deep Pacific Hawaiian ocean.
It's just pouring right into the center of the earth. You know, this natural spring. So there's something really cool about the fact that, I mean, that's how painting's made, isn't it? It's like different materials that are coming together, much like a real natural spring is, right? It's the earth's, it's God's materials that are coming together to create his own painting. You look back and you're like, when I first saw those images, I didn't even think it was real. Like, is that?
Yeah.
Because I called this art gallerist. She loved my paintings. I said, well, let me make some paintings on the area. She said, what is there? It's, well, there's a place that everyone goes to. It's called Grand Prismatic. And so I looked at the images and I thought, well, how can I incorporate what I've already done, which would be the ocean ones, into this?
I feel like we've talked a lot about the art side of things. It would be, I do want to touch on the business side of things. You know, because art is a business.
Sure.
And we run businesses. Now, do you in your world, do you have like an agent, or are you doing what skill you learned when you were door-to-door book selling? Because this is something that's it's really dear. When you said you did that, that was early on in our conversation, and in my mind, I'm like, well, there you go, boy. If I had that skill, I wouldn't have avoided when everyone tells me. And Troy still to this day, he'll be like, hey, you need to email this person, or okay, reach out to this person, and I just collapse. The salesman of me, I don't know how to do it. Now in person, I'll talk your ear off.
Sure.
But I never have gotten that skill to blindly reach out. And honestly, I do know that the people who did early on in their career, they're great. I mean, that is a skill to do.
That's right.
Is that something that kind of led to it, or I mean? Like, do you have agents, or do you have?
No, it's just
calling up a gallery and saying, "Look, here's my work." I mean, how many galleries do you have your work in?
There's a gallery in one in Jackson, Wyoming, one in Big Sky, one in Fort Lauderdale, one in Delray, Jupiter, Naples, Charlotte, Asheville.
Told you we have a baller on our hands here.
Charlotte, New York. They're like different places, Santa Fe, different places.
How did you acquire? How did you get to those galleries? Just plain and simple. Layman's terms.
I mean, step by step, I did one at a time, right?
Yeah.
I remember going to.
But you also have to have the inventory to give.
Sure, right.
So
You've got to have the inventory, right? You've got to have the inventory.
So you've been,
right.
At some point, you have to be stacking your chips, holding out, or just a busy little squirrel.
Right. And you've also got to have the right work. Yes. Right. I know some artists say, well, how do I get into a gallery? I'm like, well, let me see your painting. Let me see your work. Good. You're like, well, your work's not ready to go to a gallery. Just think, you've only got one shot of speaking to that gallery.
Yes.
Right? Yes. You've only got one shot to present your work to someone. If you send them like an off video, they're like,
I say that to so many young
and you don't
filmmakers.
Always want to get into every gallery.
Yeah,
right.
True.
It's got to be the right fit. You don't want to send your painting somewhere and they sit there. And sorry, what you say? Sorry, you say?
No, I love that.
That's what you say to each of the people that say, "Hey, Spidey, how do I get into the industry?"
Oh, I mean, how do you? I mean, I guess in some ways it is the cold call, because the people who have gotten into my world have been just direct messaging me, and I got to see if they're going to measure up, like you said.
Yeah.
But I'm new to the fine art world with my photographs. I have photographs in the Morrison Gallery. Have you heard of them?
Yeah.
Which I would think is one of the premier fine art photography galleries, but the whole different exhibitions or whatever we tried to learn. I learned some stuff from Cheryl, who was talking all about it. To have, I don't know, how many collections how many products do you have how many did you have when you first started to go to a gallery? 15?
Yeah. Not a lot, but then I make them to send them there. But now they want to see what I'm sending before I'm sending them.
What do you mean? They want
want to like preview what you're going to send.
So are they going to have a take on something? We've got enough of your blue stuff.
Yeah, exactly. We
need some more
someone down in Florida. So I really like these colors palette down in Florida. This is really what we like, and
that's what
and so we want some kind of earthy and Santa Fe. Well, so it cycles upon the area, but also I'm always changing things up. I never really wanted to fit within a specific, hey, this is what he does, bam. Yeah. I always wanted to try to, I need to keep it different. I need to keep it fresh. And I'm always trying to explore, take it a different direction. But, I think the one I remember going to a first gallery, I remember someone connected me to the gallery.
Okay.
I know, it was a gallery in, I think it was Chattanooga. A lady called Elizabeth Corker, who's Bob Corker's wife. She was really interested in my paintings, and she said, "Well, this lady in Chattanooga, I think she'd like your work. Why don't we come through and have lunch?" And I showed her my paintings, and she said, "Well, great, okay." So I took her some paintings, and then I went to another gallery, and over time moved up to better galleries and taken them out of other galleries. Okay. And but I always wanted to, back to your question about business and sales. And back to my old friend Harry, who taught me that hope sucks. He said, you can't build your business on hoping that art galleries are going to sell your work, right?
Yeah.
It's a pretty hopeless, but I mean, what would you tell your wife? Hey, well, let's hope someone works this month. Let's hope someone walks in the gallery. So I didn't think it was a very practical way to build a business. And so I really wanted to make sure that people would buy paintings from me. Right. Oh, okay. So I have a truck. A couple of people work for me. We go to someone's home. We take paintings. We hold them up. We present the work. I wanted an art studio that was like expansive, and it was an experience. And people could come there and they could see work, and they could see me paint. They could see where the frames are made. They could see paintings that are in progress, and they could meet my little dogs, and they could, see where I varnish the paintings, and where does he work, and how does he catalog paintings, and all these different things,
I mean, as you're saying that, I'm seeing the younger you learning all those things.
Yeah.
Through those your early years.
Well, and when someone walks in, people are always worried about how's a painting priced and why is art so much. Well, they come to the studio and they see everything that's involved, and they're like, well, that kind of makes more sense. There's a couple of people working here. There's a frame shop. There's lights. There's air conditioning. There's paintings everywhere. There's things, right?
Yeah.
Did
you have a problem? That's a fun question, because I think I was just asked that in relation to my world.
Yeah.
How do you determine your rate? Not your rate, your cost of a painting.
It's by the square inch.
Oh, is it that simple?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
yeah.
Explain, wait.
Yeah. So, a 4x4 is $8,500. 4x6.
No, but 85. You came up with that.
I kind of it's like $8,450 or something like that.
Yeah.
It's like
is that a standard?
Most people do it that way. Okay. Yeah, most people do it that way.
It's not a term. It's not an amount you came up with based off of the amount of work it took to do it and your.
No, they're all priced the same.
Okay, good.
They're all priced the same, and there's a reason for that, right? Because you can't necessarily say, well, that painting is better than that painting is better than that painting, and all day long you're pricing things all differently, and it's all in your head.
Yeah, it's a mess.
And someone's like, what are you painting? Well, this is the price. This is the price, and this is what it is.
Yeah.
Bam.
That's how mine is with Morrison Galleries.
Right.
The same. Yeah.
Same price, and so it's priced per square inch. Yeah, and that's kind of standard. And over time, I think I started it was like maybe $2 a square inch, 2.5, and then square inch got up to like 3.5, 4 now. I think
but it does go up.
Yeah,
right?
and here's the thing: you got to put it up as an artist as you're getting better. Number one, but two, with inflation,
bring up your cost.
Sure,
okay.
You want to bring up your sales price, right? Because, I think there's an interest, and I've spoken to a few gallery owners about this recently. Is that there's still people have a mental barrier around certain numbers, right? It might be like $10,000, or it might be $5,000 for a client, or it might be $20,000. It depends where it is. But the price of paintings is still, someone might still be trying to keep it under $10,000, right?
Okay.
Yet inflation has meant that $10,000 isn't $10,000 anymore, right? It should be $20,000. You know what I mean? Or like $15,000.
For sure.
And because all your cost of materials have all gone up, so the artist is actually making less, but the art gallery still says, hey, we need to keep it under 10. You're like, well, or whatever the number is, right? Yeah. And I said, look, you need to stretch yourself, and the artists need to push themselves to become uncomfortable, slightly uncomfortable. You were saying earlier, what's the main thing? Well, you got to be uncomfortable. What's the main sales thing?
Yeah.
You got to be okay at being uncomfortable, right?
Because I'm not.
Well,
I'm trying to be.
Yeah, but you know what I'm talking. You know that window I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
Where you're like, oh, I'm uncomfortable. That's good. Embrace it. Don't let it go away, right? And just be like, this is uncomfortable. This is the zone I need to be in. If I want to grow, if I want to be successful.
So true.
As the artist, otherwise I'm leaving it all up to a gallery owner or someone else or whoever, but they're not going to do it. Everyone's like, well, how do you get into a gallery? So why do you want to get in a gallery? Well, I want them to promote my work. I'm like, well, you think they're going to promote your work? They might put it on a wall. They're promoting their gallery, not necessarily you. Who's best at promoting you? You, right? And so I've had to unlearn a lot of those things, which are not very British, right? It's not very British to speak, to promote yourself, right? It's not very British to go and wrap your car in a painting, right?
Yeah.
But was I a little uncomfortable doing it? Yes. Do some people think I'm a bit of an idiot for doing it? Yes. Is it a fun story? Yeah. Right. Is it sort of comical and fun? And how do you you got hoodies and whatever you're making, mate. How do you make it fun? And how do you slightly be uncomfortable?
Yeah.
And that's why the selling books was probably the most important part.
I see it so clearly.
Right.
Like the full story of you. And I know it's only an hour of your story, but
now it makes sense.
I do love how the beginning literally just made it to the end, because I do see it. I really do.
Sure.
I can't help. I gotta be honest. I've said it before. I want a gallery.
Yeah.
I want one.
Yeah.
I want a gallery where it's very similar to what you said. Like it could be something where I'm come and watch a shot get done, maybe, or but it's hang. I've got hundreds of photos.
Yeah.
Stuff that nobody's ever seen.
Yeah.
You know, and little milk crates full of, 5x11s, and you get some big ones, and come hang out on some velvet couch and listen to music, and don't leave for a while. You know.
Yeah.
I have that dream, so I'm very inspired and envious of you.
Right, you should come by the studio.
Oh,
Yellow Wolf had a place over there once near me. You worked with him, I think.
Okay, yeah.
It's over in East Nashville.
Yeah. 10 years of it.
Yeah.
Where?
I'm sure it's over in East Nashville, Inglewood. Okay. You probably.
I want to come over though.
I bet you've been over. I bet you've been there. But yeah, people come in all the time and chit chat and hang out.
I definitely am not going to be a stranger. Don't you be a stranger to me.
No, absolutely. But people come by and when I first started, I was a bit uncomfortable. People chatting while I paint, but now people just come by and I just work.
That's cool. Is it open door?
Yeah, it's normally open door. I said it's by appointment or by chance.
Dude, thank you so much for your time. Dude.
Oh, my
that
pleasure.
was so inspiring, and I honestly, this was personal to me because I'm literally like mentally taking notes, and I'm inspired by your work and your craft.
Well, same.
It's
Really
cool.
It's beautiful to see what you do. I mean, the creating that look and that aesthetic takes a long time. And that look and keeping it consistent. And like, this is, because you have this, whereas I can go and do really whatever I want, you do have some constraints. Sure. So it's like you're trying to fit your artistic world into certain constraints that also have to be as artistically inspired as the musician.
Yes.
And you got to tell that story.
Very much.
And it's such a visual world now. Some people don't always, I mean, I don't know. I'm not a good listener when it comes to songs. My wife tells me, you didn't even listen to that song, did you? So.
You're more mood.
So I do. But I think it's important, like, as what you're doing, you're visually telling the story.
Yeah.
Which was an industry that really wasn't there before. People have been painting for a long time.
Yeah.
Right? But how long have people been making videos for?
I don't know. Probably since the 80s, I guess. But
not long. It's not long. It's not that long.
The craft
like, if you look at it in terms of art history, I mean,
it's an ongoing business, and I definitely have kind of honed my style.
Yeah.
And it's like you said, it's a branch. It changes.
Yeah.
You come around, but I'm definitely not like on a tree over here. I know where I'm going.
Sure. You're like, that was cool in that one. Let's do this over in this one.
Exactly. I know where I'm at, and so like. The fact that you said that it was an honor, because I look at your work and it has a very distinct style.
Sure.
So much of a style, you have a car wrapped in that style. Truly.
Well,
and I love it.
Right.
And it's the same thing. I make it very known that I'm not a jack of all trades. I have a style.
Sure.
I have, and that, like you just said,
that's right.
years of getting to where I can deliver that quick, efficient, and time and time again. Mm-hmm. So that's
and
that's the fun of it.
They've all got to be as beautifully finished as the other.
Yeah.
And you've got to make sure that finish is consistent, and so that's
and intentional.
Yeah.
With the right amount of intention.
Yeah.
Because I'm writing there. I felt exactly what you said.
Yeah.
Where you were like, this is this and it's this. Yeah. You kind of like it's the intentional, not intentional, makeup, no makeup. It's how do you blur those lines? But I was with you the whole time. Thank you again.
My pleasure. My pleasure.